Yue-Sai, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's midnight there in Shanghai, very late for you, so we appreciate it.
Hello, I'm Yue-Sai Khan.
China is changing very, very fast. The economy is growing like crazy. It really is very, very different than when I first started doing business in China, like in 1980, 84.
About 110 people have had their own.
Today's guest has a voice that can only be described as a gift from God.
How does it feel for you to be compared to Oprah?
Well, it can't be compared to Oprah. I mean, the television in China is so different. First of all, media is so controlled. Media is always owned by the government. Oprah can really easily own her programs, and she can do pretty much what she wants to do. But in China, it isn't like that at all. You can't own a media company. The government has a right to say that you cannot get onto the satellite or you can only air in a certain area.
You have done so well from a media standpoint, a business standpoint. You are a household name now in China. How did this all come about for you?
It really first started with television. I started doing cable television in America. So the Chinese government all of a sudden realized that, oh my God, there is this Chinese woman who knows something about China. Started doing a series called One World to them, and that was like a walk on the moon, because in those days there was no television. Right now it's just amazing. There are 3,000 stations. In those days there was one network on one station.
It's like this entire country would be watching one program at the same time.
I didn't have to be a genius to become a household name.
What do you think the Chinese think of Americans right now?
Well, there are two ways of looking at this. If you're talking about the Chinese looking at the American culture, well, then I would say to you that the Chinese have always liked American culture. I mean, from Coca-Cola, to Hollywood movies, they are great admirers of American culture. But I think politically, there are things that they really do not like. The latest, for example, the way that the American government is buying $600 billion worth of debt. That's the kind of stuff that, from an economic point of view, they really don't like.
What do you think is the biggest misconception Americans have about the Chinese?
It's getting better, actually, because more and more Americans are actually traveling to China. And more and more Americans are coming to China to learn Chinese. Unless you have been to a place, you cannot really say to me that you really know that place very well. And what is happening here is essentially a miracle. And anyone who has come here would be sort of thinking to themselves, this place is growing like amazing. And I better learn something about this place, because it is an area of the world that we should pay a little bit more attention to. I have seen the growth and the changes in the perception of the Chinese themselves. What I mean is the way they look at themselves. When I first started working here, the Chinese sort of was very unsure. They didn't know much about the outside world. They were very unsure about their capability. But of course, the last 20 years, it's grown like leaps and bounds. The Chinese have gotten a lot more self-confidence. This is the most impressive change. It's amazing, the psychological change. This will enable them to go into the next decade with extraordinary power.